My name is Lourdes Garcia, and I am 32 years old. I never expected that doubling a tech startup's revenue would lead to betrayal instead of recognition. When my boss Derek forced me to sign an NDA to steal my marketing strategy, claiming his son would take this project to the next level, I felt crushed. But during his big investor pitch, everything changed when a man in a cheap suit walked in with documents that turned the tables completely. If someone has ever tried to steal your work, hit like and subscribe right now. Let me tell you exactly how I outsmarted my backstabbing boss and walked away with the funding he thought was guaranteed. I graduated from Stanford with honors in marketing and business analytics. Despite receiving offers from several Fortune 500 companies with six-figure salaries and comprehensive benefits packages, I chose a different path. I wanted to make a real impact, to see my ideas implemented without layers of corporate bureaucracy. That is why I joined Quantum Leap, a small tech startup developing customer relationship management software for small businesses. From our first meeting, Derek Thompson, the founder and CEO, struck me as visionary and passionate. He talked about disrupting the industry and creating tools that would empower small business owners rather than just squeezing profits from them. During my interview, Derek leaned forward in his chair, eyes bright with enthusiasm as he described his vision. "Lourdes, what we need is someone who can think outside the box," he said. "Someone who understands both data and human psychology. I can offer you something those big corporations cannot: real equity in what we are building and recognition for your contributions." Those words resonated with me. Recognition, equity, building something meaningful together. I accepted his offer despite the significant pay cut compared to my other options. The office was nothing fancy. Just 2 floors in a converted warehouse with exposed brick and plants struggling to survive on windowsills. But I felt the energy of possibility the moment I walked in. I threw myself into the work completely. While my friends posted pictures of weekend getaways and happy hours, I was hunched over spreadsheets and customer feedback reports. Nights and weekends became extensions of my workday. I ordered takeout to the office so frequently that the local Thai restaurant started including extra spring rolls with a note saying, "For our favorite workaholic." The core of my strategy came from a realization that our competitors were all focusing on technical specifications in their marketing, trying to outfeature each other. But from analyzing customer interviews, I discovered that small business owners did not care about technical jargon. They wanted solutions to specific problems that kept them up at night. I developed what I called the pain point content ecosystem, a comprehensive marketing approach that created educational content, addressing specific small business challenges, positioned our software as the solution, and nurtured leads through a carefully designed journey. The content was authentic, helpful, and positioned our company as a true partner to small businesses rather than just another vendor. My colleagues Madison and Tyler became my closest allies at Quantum Leap. Madison headed our small development team while Tyler managed customer success. We often stayed late, brainstorming ways to improve the product and customer experience. Madison, with her purple-streaked hair and collection of vintage band t-shirts, brought technical brilliance and creative thinking. Tyler, always in perfectly pressed button-downs, despite our casual office environment, offered invaluable insights from customer interactions. "Your marketing strategy is connecting with people on a human level," Tyler told me after reviewing the latest customer surveys. "They feel understood for the first time." The company culture seemed genuinely collaborative. We had weekly innovation sessions where anyone could pitch ideas regardless of their position. Derek would bring in donuts every Friday morning and take time to check in with each team member. It felt like we were building something special together. The results of my strategy were undeniable. When I joined, Quantum Leap had an annual recurring revenue of $2 million and was struggling to grow. Within 10 months, I had increased that to $4.8 million, more than doubling the company's revenue. Our customer acquisition cost dropped by 78%, while customer retention improved by 42%. The specific elements that made the strategy so effective included personalized content journeys based on business type and stage interactive assessment tools that provided immediate value while qualifying leads, and community building initiatives that transformed customers into advocates. I developed partnerships with small business associations, that gave us credibility and expanded our reach without expensive advertising. Each component worked together seamlessly, creating a marketing flywheel that gained momentum with each cycle. The approach was not just effective but sustainable, built on genuine value rather than gimmicks or hype. As the date for our quarterly company meeting approached, I prepared a comprehensive presentation on our marketing results and future strategy. I spent hours refining the slides and practicing my delivery. This would be my moment to share my success with the entire team and receive recognition for my contributions. Derek had hinted at a possible promotion, maybe even a C-level position as Chief Marketing Officer. The night before the meeting, I could barely sleep. I was excited to share what we had accomplished, and eager to hear Derek publicly acknowledge my role in the company's transformation. I believed I had found a place where my work was valued, where I could grow professionally while making a meaningful impact. Little did I know that the meeting would be the beginning of a betrayal that would change the course of my career. The quarterly meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. on a Wednesday in our main conference room. I arrived 30 minutes early to set up my presentation and make sure everything was perfect. As I connected my laptop to the projector, Derek walked in already dressed in his investor meeting attire, a navy blue suit that was a step up from his usual jeans and button-down shirt. "Morning, Lourdes," he said, his tone oddly formal. "I will be handling the marketing portion of the presentation today. We need to focus on the big picture for the team." Before I could respond, he handed me a printed agenda. My name was nowhere to be found, and the 45-minute slot that had been reserved for my marketing presentation now simply read, "Marketing Strategy Overview, Derek Thompson." "But I prepared a comprehensive presentation," I said, feeling a knot forming in my stomach. "We agreed last week that I would present the results." Derek barely looked at me as he rearranged some chairs. "Plans change. We need to keep it high level today. Your slides are too detailed for this audience." As other team members filtered in, I took my seat, trying to maintain my composure. Madison shot me a questioning look and I shrugged, slightly confused myself about what was happening. Derek began the meeting with his typical enthusiasm, reviewing company milestones and celebrating our growth. Then he transitioned to marketing with a slide that looked suspiciously like one from my presentation, except my name had been removed from the footer. "I am excited to share the revolutionary marketing strategy I have developed over the past year," Derek announced to the room. My jaw dropped as he proceeded to present my entire approach as if it were his own creation. "The pain point content ecosystem," he explained using my exact terminology, "is a unique approach I developed to connect with small business owners on a deeper level." For 45 excruciating minutes, I watched as Derek took credit for every aspect of my work, from the customer segmentation model to the content strategy to the partnership initiatives. Not once did he mention my name or contribution. Madison kept glancing at me with wide eyes while Tyler frowned deeply, his arms crossed over his chest. When the meeting ended, I waited until everyone else had filed out before approaching Derek. "What just happened?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. "That was my strategy, my approach, my results. We worked on this presentation together last week, and you knew I was supposed to present it." Derek sighed as if I were a child throwing a tantrum. "Lourdes, this is business. As CEO, everything that happens at this company ultimately comes from me. The strategy may have been implemented by you, but the vision was mine. I need to position myself strongly with the team and potential investors." "Investors," I repeated. "What investors?" Derek looked at his watch impatiently. "I have meetings set up with several venture capital firms next month. We are going after serious funding, and I need to present a cohesive leadership story. Shouldn't I be part of those meetings? The marketing strategy will be central to any funding pitch." "I will handle it," Derek said firmly. "Now I have a call in 5 minutes. We can discuss this another time if you are still concerned." I left his office feeling like the wind had been knocked out of me. In the hallway, Madison was waiting for me, her expression sympathetic. "That was messed up," she said, walking with me back to my desk. "He completely stole your thunder in there." "Has he done this before?" I asked. Madison hesitated, then nodded. "Remember Alex from product development? He created the user interface that everyone loves. Derek presented it as his own vision to the last round of investors. Alex quit 2 weeks later. That afternoon, I noticed I had been removed from several email threads discussing company strategy. When I checked the shared drive where all our marketing documents were stored, I discovered that several files had been modified. Opening them, I saw that my name had been removed from strategy documents I had authored, replaced with Quantum Leap Executive Team, or simply Derek Thompson. The next morning, I arrived early and overheard Derek in his office door slightly ajar, practicing what sounded like a pitch. The pain point content ecosystem was my breakthrough realization, he was saying to an empty room. I identified that our competitors were missing the human element in their marketing. My approach has resulted in a 120% increase in revenue in less than a year. Over the next week, Derek began micromanaging my work in a way he never had before. He requested daily updates and questioned decisions he had previously trusted me to make independently. When I asked for access to some advanced analytics tools to refine our targeting, he denied the request, saying it was unnecessary expenditure. At night, I would lie awake replaying conversations and events, wondering if I had somehow misunderstood our working relationship. Had I been naive to believe Derek valued my contributions? The lack of sleep began to affect me. I developed dark circles under my eyes and found myself snapping at small irritations. I started documenting everything, saving emails, recording meetings when appropriate, and keeping detailed notes of all my work and contributions. Something told me I might need this evidence later. 2 weeks after the quarterly meeting, Derek's assistant Rachel sent me a calendar invitation for a private meeting with Derek. The subject line simply read, "Important Documentation Review." When I entered Derek's office at the appointed time, he was sitting behind his desk with a folder in front of him, his expression unreadable. "Lourdes, take a seat," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. "We need to discuss something important before we move forward with our funding round." Derek slid a thick document across the desk toward me. The words "non-disclosure agreement" were printed in bold letters across the top. "This is standard procedure when we are entering a funding round." Derek explained, his tone casual, but his eyes watchful. "Everyone on the executive team is signing one." I picked up the document, flipping through the pages of dense legal text. "I have never had to sign anything like this before," I said. "We already have confidentiality clauses in our employment contracts." Derek leaned forward, placing his elbows on the desk. "This is different. We are going after serious money, Lourdes. 8 figures. The venture capital firms require additional protection for proprietary information." As I skimmed the document, certain phrases jumped out at me: all intellectual property, sole discretion of the company, perpetual rights. The language seemed unusually broad and restrictive. "I need time to review this properly," I said, closing the folder. Derek's friendly demeanor slipped slightly. "We do not have time. I need this signed today. Everyone else has already signed without issue." He slid a pen toward me. "Unless you are not committed to our vision anymore." The implied threat was clear. Sign, or your commitment will be questioned. "This agreement ensures that company intellectual property stays with the company." Derek continued. "The marketing strategy you have been implementing is a core company asset. We need to protect it as we scale." "You mean the strategy I developed?" I could not keep the edge out of my voice. Derek's expression hardened. "The strategy you developed while employed by Quantum Leap using company resources. That is how business works, Lourdes." He glanced at his watch, then added, "Once we secure this funding, we are going to take the marketing department to the next level. My son Brandon is finishing his MBA at Wharton, and I am bringing him in to oversee the expansion of your strategy. He has some brilliant ideas to build on what we have started." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Not only was Derek stealing credit for my work, but he was planning to install his son above me to oversee my own strategy. "So I would be reporting to your son?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Brandon has fresh perspectives from one of the top business schools in the country." Derek replied, avoiding a direct answer. "This project is ready to move to the next level, and he is the right person to lead that charge." I stared at the NDA, feeling trapped. If I refused to sign, Derek would likely question my loyalty and possibly even terminate my employment. If I signed, I might be legally surrendering rights to my own intellectual work. I need your signature, Lourdes. Today. Derek's voice had lost all warmth. This is non-negotiable. If you want to remain part of Quantum Leap's future. With reluctance weighing on me like a physical burden, I signed the document. Derek immediately took it back, his smile returning as he slipped it into a folder. Excellent. I knew you were a team player. Now I have another meeting. We will talk more about the funding pitch later. That evening, I called my friend Julia, a corporate attorney who specialized in technology companies. Over wine in her apartment, I explained the situation and showed her a copy of the NDA I had managed to photograph with my phone before returning it. Julia frowned as she read through the images. This is extremely broad language even for an NDA, she said. It essentially claims all intellectual property you create, even concepts and methodologies, belong exclusively to the company in perpetuity. Is that legal? I asked. Legal, yes, but aggressive. There are some concerning clauses here. She pointed to several sections explaining how they could potentially restrict even my ability to use general marketing knowledge I had developed before joining Quantum Leap. The good news, Julia added, is that there appears to be a loophole. The agreement specifically covers proprietary information disclosed to the employee. If you can prove you developed the strategy independently without using proprietary company information. The next day, I discovered something that made my stomach turn. While searching for some historical data in our company email archives, I found correspondence between Derek and several venture capital firms. He had been sending them presentations about his marketing strategy for weeks long before he had asked me to sign the NDA. In every presentation, he presented himself as the sole architect of the strategy that had doubled the company's revenue. My hands shook with anger as I forwarded these emails to my personal account, careful to include only information related to my own work. This was evidence I might need later. Through conversations with our finance director, I also learned that Quantum Leap's financial situation was more precarious than Derek had publicly admitted. Despite our revenue growth, expenses had increased dramatically and we had less than 4 months of runway left. This funding round was not just strategic, it was necessary for survival. Over the next few weeks, I noticed I was being systematically excluded from strategic conversations. Meeting invitations stopped coming. When I walked into rooms, conversations would abruptly change topic. Derek installed password protection on certain shared folders I had previously been able to access. I began meticulously documenting everything related to the marketing strategy. I recovered original drafts from my personal notes and recreated timelines showing my development process. I gathered emails showing feedback on my ideas and implementation steps. I even found recordings of meetings where I had presented early versions of the strategy and received Derek's approval to proceed. One afternoon, I overheard Derek on the phone apparently speaking with his son. Brandon, this is perfect timing. Once we secure this funding, you will take over the entire marketing operation. The strategy is solid. We just need someone with your pedigree to scale it properly. I had heard enough. I knocked firmly on his partially open door, and Derek quickly ended his call. We need to talk, I said, closing the door behind me. I am busy, Lourdes. Can this wait? No, it cannot. I know you are planning to bring your son in above me, and I know you have been presenting my strategy to investors as your own. Derek's expression darkened. I would be careful about making accusations. They are not accusations when I have evidence, I replied. I developed the pain point content ecosystem. I implemented it. I refined it based on results. It doubled our revenue. And now you are trying to push me aside and give control to your son who has never even worked in this industry. Derek stood up, his face flushing. Everything you created while working here belongs to this company, to me. You signed an agreement acknowledging that fact. Your role is to execute, not to claim ownership. I was brought in to innovate and lead marketing efforts, not to be a silent executor of someone else's vision. You were brought in to do a job, Derek snapped. A job you are paid for. If you do not like the arrangement, there are plenty of marketers who would be grateful for your position. The conversation devolved from there, with Derek becoming increasingly dismissive and hostile. When I mentioned the possibility of speaking directly to the investors to clarify my role, he laughed outright. Try it, he said. See where that gets you. Remember your NDA, Lourdes. breaking that would end your career in this industry. I left his office shaking, with a mixture of rage and fear. He had threatened me, essentially confirming every suspicion I had developed. Walking back to my desk, I realized I needed a plan, and allies who could help me execute it. That evening, I texted Madison and Tyler need to talk. Not at the office. Important. We agreed to meet at a small coffee shop 3 blocks from our usual haunts, where we were unlikely to encounter other Quantum Leap employees. When they arrived, Madison immediately sensed my mood. "This is about Derek stealing your strategy, isn't it?" she asked as she slid into the booth across from me. I nodded, then spent the next 20 minutes detailing everything that had happened. The NDA, the discovery of Derek's presentations to investors, his plan to install his son Brandon in a position above me, and finally his thinly veiled threat to my career. Tyler whistled low. That explains the weird atmosphere lately. He has been meeting behind closed doors more than usual. He made me sign an NDA that essentially says everything I create belongs to the company, I explained, but my friend Julia, the attorney, thinks there might be a loophole. Madison leaned forward. What kind of loophole? The NDA specifically covers proprietary information disclosed to me by the company, but I developed the marketing strategy based on publicly available information and my own expertise, not company secrets. Tyler frowned. But will that distinction hold up legally? Derek could argue that company customer data informed your strategy. That is why I need more specialized legal advice, I admitted. Julia recommended I speak with someone who specializes in intellectual property. The next day, I scheduled a consultation with Benjamin Ramirez, an attorney specializing in intellectual property rights in the tech industry. Benjamin's office was in a converted Victorian house, with bookshelves lining every wall and sunlight streaming through stained glass windows. After I explained my situation, Benjamin reviewed the NDA and my evidence carefully. "There is something interesting here," he said, pointing to a clause on the 3rd page. "This agreement covers proprietary methodologies and strategies disclosed to the employee or developed using proprietary company information. The wording creates a distinction between what the company shared with you and what you created independently. So if I can prove I developed the strategy without using proprietary information," I asked. "Exactly. Can you demonstrate that your marketing approach was developed using publicly available information, general industry knowledge, and your own expertise from before joining Quantum Leap?" I nodded enthusiastically. "Absolutely. The core concepts were part of my thesis at Stanford. I have dated drafts and research that predates my employment." Benjamin smiled. "That could be our leverage. The NDA cannot retroactively claim ownership of intellectual property you developed before joining the company." Derek made a critical error in the wording. Over the next week, I gathered every piece of evidence I could find. I retrieved my thesis from Stanford's digital archives, showing the early framework of what would become the pain point content ecosystem. I collected dated notes from my personal journals, showing the evolution of the strategy. I even found emails to former classmates where I had discussed the concepts before joining Quantum Leap. Meanwhile, Madison discovered something crucial. Derek had scheduled a pitch meeting with Apex Ventures, one of the most prestigious venture capital firms in Silicon Valley, for the following Friday. This would be his big play for the funding Quantum Leap desperately needed. "If he secures this funding based on your work while planning to replace you with his son, you may never get proper recognition," Madison warned. I knew she was right. Once the money was in, Derek's version of events would become the official narrative. My window for action was closing rapidly. Through Tyler's connections in the industry, I learned more about Apex Ventures and their investment approach. They valued innovation and authentic leadership and had a history of backing founders with integrity. Their lead partner, Marcus Wright, had a reputation for being able to spot both promising ideas and potential red flags in company culture. While gathering information, I made an unexpected discovery. At a marketing conference 6 months earlier, I had briefly met Samuel Rivera, a junior partner at Apex. We had chatted about effective marketing for small businesses, and I had shared some of my ideas, the very ideas that had become Quantum Leap's strategy. I found his business card tucked in my conference notebook. After some deliberation, I sent Samuel an email requesting a brief coffee meeting to reconnect before your firm's upcoming discussions with Quantum Leap. To my surprise, he agreed to meet the very next day. At a quiet cafe away from the tech district, Samuel remembered our previous conversation clearly. Your ideas about addressing small business pain points were refreshing, he said. So different from the feature-focused marketing everyone else was doing. I carefully explained that I had implemented those ideas at Quantum Leap with tremendous success without directly accusing Derek of anything. Samuel seemed to read between the lines. Our meeting with Quantum Leap is this Friday, he said thoughtfully. Marcus is leading the discussion. He values knowing who the real innovators are in any company we invest in. As I left the meeting, I felt both nervous and determined. I had not explicitly asked Samuel to intervene, but I had ensured that at least someone at Apex knew the true source of the strategy Derek would be pitching. Back at my apartment that evening, Benjamin called with a proposed plan of action. We have enough evidence to establish your prior development of the core strategy concepts, he said. I recommend we prepare a formal letter asserting your intellectual property rights and the limitations of the NDA you signed. And then what, I asked. Then we make sure Derek and the investors receive this information at a strategically important moment. The plan was risky. If executed poorly, it could backfire and make me appear vindictive or unprofessional. But if we succeeded, it would protect my intellectual property and prevent Derek from building his future and his son's career on my stolen work. For the next 2 days, I rehearsed possible scenarios and responses with Benjamin. We crafted a letter that was factual and professional, asserting my rights without making accusations that could not be substantiated. The letter included an appendix with key evidence dating my development of the strategy concepts. As Friday approached, I felt a strange calm settle over me. The fear and anxiety were still there, but they were overshadowed by a determination to stand up for myself and my work. Whatever happened next, I would no longer be a passive participant in Derek's schemes. Friday morning arrived with gray skies and a light drizzle that matched my nervous energy. I dressed carefully in my most professional outfit, a charcoal gray suit with a deep blue blouse that Madison always said brought out the determination in my eyes. I arrived at the office earlier than usual, nodding to the few early workers already at their desks. The pitch meeting with Apex Ventures was scheduled for 10 a.m. in our main conference room. By 9:30, our office was buzzing with unusual energy. The administrative staff had arranged fresh flowers and premium coffee service. Derek had hired professional cleaners the previous evening to ensure everything was spotless. From my desk, I could see investors beginning to arrive. Men and women in expensive suits carrying leather portfolios being ushered into the conference room by Rachel, Derek's assistant. I recognized Marcus Wright, Apex's lead partner, a tall man with silver temples and the confident posture of someone who had made billion-dollar decisions before breakfast. At 9:50, Derek emerged from his office, looking immaculate in a tailored suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. He stopped by several desks, shaking hands and projecting confidence, deliberately avoiding eye contact with me. As he passed my workspace, I heard him instruct Rachel, "Make sure Lourdes stays available in case we need specific campaign data during the Q&A." So that was my role, to be on call to provide details if needed, but not actually present for the pitch. I nodded politely when Rachel relayed the message while mentally reviewing the plan Benjamin and I had finalized. At precisely 10 a.m., Derek entered the conference room and closed the door behind him. Through the glass walls, I could see him shaking hands with the investors, his smile broad and confident. He began setting up his presentation, slides I had created but with my name removed from them. Madison appeared at my side, a coffee in each hand. She offered one to me with a sympathetic smile. "Ready," she whispered. I nodded, taking a sip of the coffee to calm my nerves. Everything is in place. From our vantage point, we could see Derek beginning his presentation. His body language exuded confidence as he gestured toward the growth charts, the visual representation of the success my strategy had achieved. The investors leaned forward, clearly engaged. Marcus Wright nodded appreciatively at several points, making notes in a leather-bound notebook. At 10:20, right on schedule, the elevator doors opened, and a man stepped out. He was middle-aged, wearing an off-the-rack suit that had seen better days, carrying a weathered briefcase. He approached the reception desk, spoke briefly with the receptionist, and was directed toward the conference room. The man knocked once on the glass door, then entered without waiting for a response. Derek stopped mid-sentence, his expression shifting from confidence to confusion. "Excuse me," Derek said, clearly annoyed at the interruption. "We are in the middle of an important meeting." The man seemed unperturbed. "Derek Thompson?" he asked, opening his briefcase. "Yes, that is me, but as I said, we are in the middle of something. I am serving you with legal documents asserting intellectual property rights related to marketing strategies currently being presented to investors." The man extracted an envelope and held it out. Derek's face flushed crimson. "This is ridiculous. I will have security remove you." Before Derek could reach for the phone, Marcus Wright held up his hand. "I would like to see these documents if you do not mind." The man handed the envelope to Marcus instead of Derek, which seemed to further infuriate Derek. "This is a private meeting," Derek sputtered. "Whatever this is can wait." Marcus calmly opened the envelope and began reading. His expression remained neutral for several seconds, then one eyebrow raised slightly. As he continued reading, something unexpected happened. He smiled, then chuckled, and finally broke into genuine laughter. "Derek," Marcus said, clapping him on the shoulder, "you never mentioned that your marketing genius was actually someone named Lourdes Garcia. According to these documents, she developed this strategy concept before even joining your company." The color drained from Derek's face. "That is a misrepresentation. Lourdes works for me. She implements my vision." Marcus continued reading, his expression growing more serious. "These documents include dated evidence showing development of the pain point content ecosystem methodology, dating back to her graduate work at Stanford, predating her employment with you. There are also emails between you and Lourdes where you praise her for her innovative approach and revolutionary strategy." The other investors began murmuring among themselves, several reaching for the document to see for themselves. Derek attempted to regain control of the room. "This is a disgruntled employee attempting to disrupt our business," he insisted. "She signed an NDA acknowledging company ownership of all strategies developed during her employment." Marcus looked up, his gaze sharp. "Actually, according to this legal analysis, the NDA specifically covers proprietary information disclosed to employees. It does not cover intellectual property developed independently using general industry knowledge and publicly available information." He turned to look through the glass wall directly at me. "Is Lourdes Garcia here today?" This was my cue. I stood up, straightened my jacket, and walked to the conference room. The nervous fluttering in my stomach was still there. But with each step, my determination grew stronger. I entered the room with my head held high. "Yes, I am Lourdes Garcia," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "These are some interesting claims," Marcus said, holding up the document. "Care to elaborate?" Derek interrupted before I could speak. "This is completely inappropriate. Lourdes is not scheduled to be part of this presentation. I think we would like to hear from her directly," said a woman, sitting near Marcus, who I recognized as Sophia Chen, another senior partner at Apex. I took a deep breath and spoke clearly, addressing the entire room. "The marketing strategy that has doubled Quantum Leap's revenue is based on methodology I developed during my graduate studies at Stanford and refined through my professional experience before joining this company. I implemented this strategy here with great success, but I never transferred ownership of the underlying intellectual property." "She signed an NDA," Derek insisted. "The NDA has specific limitations," I continued calmly. "It covers company proprietary information, which my strategy methodology is not. I have documentation showing the development of these concepts predating my employment here." Marcus studied me thoughtfully. "The results speak for themselves. The strategy has clearly been effective. Would you be willing to walk us through how it works? In your own words?" Derek's face contorted with anger, but before he could object, Marcus added, "I think we need clarity on who truly understands this approach if we are going to consider an investment of this magnitude." The conference room fell silent as all eyes turned to me. This was the moment I had not dared to hope for. A chance to present my work directly to the investors without Derek's filtration or appropriation. "Of course," I said, moving toward the front of the room. Derek remained standing, his body rigid with tension. May I use the presentation materials? I asked, Marcus nodding toward the laptop connected to the projector. Please do, he replied. I navigated to a slide showing the pain point content ecosystem in its entirety, a comprehensive visual representation of the strategy that had transformed Quantum Leap's market position. The fundamental insight behind this approach, I began, is that small business owners do not make purchasing decisions based on features or specifications. They make decisions based on whether they believe a solution will solve their specific challenges. As I spoke, I felt a familiar passion rising within me. This was my work, my vision, my creation. For the first time in months, I was able to present it without fear of it being stolen or minimized. Traditional marketing in our industry focuses on technical capabilities and feature comparisons, I continued. But through extensive research during my time at Stanford and in early career positions, I discovered that this creates a disconnect with how small business owners actually make decisions. I walked through each component of the strategy, explaining not just what we had implemented but why it worked. I shared specific examples of content we had created, partnerships we had formed, and the data showing how each element contributed to our growth. Throughout my impromptu presentation, the investors remained fully engaged, asking insightful questions that I answered with confidence. Derek tried to interject several times, but his comments revealed his limited understanding of the strategy's nuances. Could you explain more about how you measure content effectiveness at each stage of the customer journey? Marcus asked. Before I could answer, Derek jumped in. We use standard industry metrics, click-through rates, conversion percentages, the usual KPIs. I smiled politely. Actually, we developed a proprietary attribution model that tracks micro-conversions through the entire journey. Standard metrics miss the nuanced interactions that ultimately lead to conversion in our ecosystem approach. As I explained the attribution methodology in detail, the contrast between my intimate knowledge of the strategy and Derek's surface-level understanding became increasingly apparent. Sophia Chen leaned forward. This approach reminds me of work I saw from a marketing think tank last year, but your implementation is more sophisticated. How did you adapt these concepts specifically for the small business software market? Derek attempted to answer but stumbled over terminology. When I provided a clear, detailed response, several investors exchanged knowing glances. After about 20 minutes of this exchange, Marcus held up his hand. I think we have a clear picture now. He turned to Derek. You mentioned earlier that your son would be taking over this marketing initiative after funding. What experience does he have with this specific methodology? Derek's confident demeanor had completely evaporated. Brandon has an MBA from Wharton. He understands modern marketing principles and can scale what Lourdes has started. But has he worked with this specific approach before? Marcus pressed. He is a quick learner, Derek replied weakly. Marcus nodded thoughtfully, then dropped a bombshell. We have actually been investigating Quantum Leap's business practices for several weeks as part of our standard due diligence. Something did not add up in the materials you sent us. The room went completely still. Derek's face paled. Our team spoke with several former employees who described a pattern of taking credit for others' work, Marcus continued. We were concerned, but the revenue growth was compelling enough that we wanted to see for ourselves. Other investors began sharing their observations. The marketing strategy is clearly brilliant, said an investor I did not recognize. But authentic leadership is equally important for sustainable growth. Derek made one last desperate attempt to regain control. Lourdes signed an NDA. Whatever she developed while working here belongs to Quantum Leap. To me, Benjamin, who had been waiting outside as we had planned, chose this moment to enter the room. He introduced himself as my attorney and addressed the NDA issue directly. The document Miss Garcia signed has specific limitations, he explained professionally. It covers proprietary company information, not intellectual property she developed independently before her employment. The strategy methodology in question is demonstrably her creation predating her work at Quantum Leap. Derek's face contorted with rage. This is corporate sabotage. She is trying to destroy everything I have built because she wants more credit. Marcus looked at Derek with something resembling pity. I think we have heard enough for today. He turned to me. Miss Garcia, would you mind stepping outside for a few minutes? We would like to speak with Mr. Thompson privately. I nodded and left the room with Benjamin, my heart pounding. In the hallway, Madison and Tyler were waiting, their expressions a mixture of anxiety and hope. How did it go? Madison whispered. I am not sure, I admitted. They know the truth now, but I do not know what they will decide. The wait felt interminable. Through the glass walls, we could see animated discussion, with Derek becoming increasingly agitated. At one point, he slammed his hand on the table, causing several investors to lean back in apparent shock. After about 15 minutes, the conference room door opened and Marcus Wright emerged. He approached me directly, his expression unreadable. Miss Garcia, I would like to speak with you privately, he said. We stepped into a small meeting room across the hall. Marcus closed the door and turned to me with an unexpected smile. That was quite a demonstration of integrity back there, he said. I just wanted the truth to be recognized, I replied. Marcus nodded. Truth is surprisingly rare in pitch meetings. He paused, studying me thoughtfully. We will not be investing in Quantum Leap under its current leadership. My heart sank. Despite everything, I had not wanted to destroy the company and affect my colleagues' livelihoods. But Marcus was not finished. However, we are very impressed with your marketing strategy and your professional handling of a difficult situation. Apex would be interested in discussing funding for a new venture, with you at the helm. I stared at him in disbelief. You want to fund me? To start my own company? Talent and integrity are a rare combination, Miss Garcia. Add in a proven strategy with demonstrable results, and that is the kind of investment opportunity we look for. Before I could process this unexpected turn of events, we heard a commotion from the conference room. Derek's voice was raised in anger, followed by the sound of something crashing to the floor. The office fell silent as two security guards appeared, summoned by Rachel at the direction of the investors. They escorted Derek from the conference room, his face flushed with rage, still shouting about betrayal and ingratitude. As Derek was led to the elevator, his eyes locked with mine through the glass walls. In that moment, I felt no satisfaction or vindication. Only a strange sense of sadness for a man who had sacrificed integrity for the appearance of success. Marcus watched the scene with a slight shake of his head. Some founders forget that sustainable success requires more than just good ideas. It requires character. He handed me his business card with a direct number written on the back. Call me on Monday. I think we have a lot to discuss about your future. 6 months can change everything. Today, I am sitting in my own office looking out over San Francisco Bay from the 20th floor of a downtown high-rise. The logo on the wall behind me reads Pain Point Solutions, the name of the company I founded with Apex Ventures' $5 million investment. The journey from that dramatic confrontation to where I am now was neither simple nor easy. After the meeting with Apex, Quantum Leap entered a tailspin. With Derek's leadership compromised and funding, prospects evaporated. The board of directors stepped in. They appointed an interim CEO and began restructuring the company. My first call was to Madison and Tyler. I am starting my own company. I told them over coffee the weekend after the Apex meeting. And I want you both with me. Madison did not hesitate. I've been waiting for someone to say those words to me for years. She said, her purple-streaked hair falling across her face as she leaned forward enthusiastically. Tyler took longer to consider. He had a young family and valued stability. What is your vision? He asked. Not just for the product, but for the company culture. I shared my plans for a company built on 3 core principles: innovation with integrity, proper attribution for all contributions, and sustainable growth over quick profits. By the end of our 3-hour conversation, Tyler was in too. Building Pain Point Solutions from scratch allowed me to implement not just my marketing strategy but also my values. We created a transparent attribution system where every team member's contributions are recognized in project documentation. Our company handbook explicitly states that managers present team achievements as collective efforts with individual recognition. The intellectual property that was the subject of so much conflict now forms the foundation of our flagship service, helping small to medium businesses develop their own customized pain point content ecosystems. We have expanded the original methodology into a comprehensive platform that has attracted clients ranging from local restaurants to regional healthcare providers. Our growth has exceeded even Marcus's optimistic projections. In just 6 months, we have achieved $2 million in revenue with a client retention rate of 96%. Last month, we moved into our permanent office space and hired our 15th employee. Perhaps the most surprising moment came 3 weeks ago at the annual Tech Innovators Conference. As I was networking during a coffee break, I turned and found myself face to face with Derek Thompson. He looked different. His expensive suit replaced by more casual attire, the confident posture now slightly stooped. I heard that after the Apex debacle, he had struggled to secure any significant funding. Quantum Leap had been acquired by a competitor for a fraction of its potential value, and Derek had been excluded from the transition leadership team. Our eyes met, and for a moment neither of us spoke. I could have ignored him, or responded with coldness after all he had done. Instead, I simply said, "Hello, Derek." He seemed surprised by my civil tone. "Lourdes," he acknowledged with a nod. "I hear your new venture is doing well." "It is," I confirmed. "How have you been?" A complex emotion crossed his face. Something between bitterness and resignation. "Starting over," he said finally. "Consulting gigs mostly." "Good luck with it," I said sincerely and meant it. Revenge had never been my goal, only recognition and the opportunity to build something authentic. As I walked away, I felt no triumph or vindication, just a quiet appreciation for how differently things might have gone had I not found the courage to stand up for myself and my work. The journey from employee to founder has been more emotionally challenging than I expected. There were nights I woke up in a cold sweat, second-guessing my decisions. There were moments of imposter syndrome so intense I considered calling Marcus to return the investment. Building something from nothing requires confronting your deepest insecurities on a daily basis. But the difference is that now I am building something authentic, something that reflects my true values. Every day when Madison and Tyler and I meet to discuss company strategy, I am reminded of what we are creating together, not just a successful business but a model for how things could be. I have made mentoring a central part of my role as CEO. Once a month I host workshops for young women in tech, teaching them to document their contributions, recognize their value, and stand up for their intellectual property. The questions they ask often remind me of my younger self. Eager to make an impact but uncertain about how to navigate complex workplace dynamics. Document everything I tell them. Keep records of your ideas, from inception to implementation. And trust your instincts when something does not feel right. What I experienced with Derek was never about revenge or even justice. It was about standing up for the principle that true success cannot be built on deception. Taking credit for others' work might yield short-term gains, but it creates a foundation that will eventually crumble. The NDA that Derek thought would silence me ultimately became the very document that exposed the limits of his claim on my intellectual property. There is a certain poetry in that outcome, a reminder that attempts to control through intimidation often backfire in unexpected ways. The most profound lesson I have learned through all of this is that your relationship with your own work matters more than external validation. When I was allowing Derek to take credit for my strategy, I was betraying not just myself but the very ideas I had created. By standing up for my intellectual property, I was honoring the value of my own contributions to the world. Success built on integrity may take longer, but it builds something that lasts. My company is growing not just because we have an effective strategy, but because we have created a culture where everyone feels valued and everyone's contributions are recognized. I keep the framed NDA on my office wall as a reminder, not of Derek's betrayal, but of the moment I decided my work deserved to be protected and recognized. It reminds me daily to create a company where no employee ever feels their contributions are being appropriated or diminished. Have you ever had your work or ideas taken without proper credit? How did you handle it? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. Sometimes standing up for ourselves is the hardest thing to do, but it is often the most important. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more real-life experiences and lessons learned the hard way. And if you know someone who might need to hear this message, share this video with them. We all deserve to have our contributions recognized and valued. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember your work has value because you created it. No one can take that away unless you let them.